Hi, David. Welcome to the show.
Hey, John. Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, yeah.
I see that you have, let me just go over here now. You got three books. One book has a first edition and a second edition. I'll close this down. But before we get to your books, I'd really like to know a little bit more about you. Why don't you tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you got to the point where you wrote these books?
Sure, sure. Well, I am the product of Portuguese immigrants that all left the Azores and ended up in the far northwestern portion of California up on the coast, and they all became dairy farmers. The joke is out of Portuguese people, we either fish or we farm, and the farmers are usually seasick people, so they don't fish. So I come from the farming side of that. Dairy farmers, my grandfather and his brothers, obviously their father before them were dairy farmers. And so I come from that stock. I grew up in the top of the Northern California Valley in the agricultural areas in a small town, less than 5,000 people in the actual town. Had one stoplight and it was in the wrong place. And like I like to tell people, I think everything you need to know in life you can find out or exists on the farm. And and so that's kind of set into motion my passion to go someplace else and to see other things. So as a young kid, I had some really good examples in life that were military people. And so I decided, I was going to try my hand at the military. I wanted to go in the Navy and be a plumber because I had an uncle that was a plumber and he's making a good living. It seemed like the right kind of thing to do. And I'd get a trade and it was all good. And I wasn't going to go to college because I probably didn't have the emotional temperament at that time to succeed in college. Not that I was not smart, it just I wasn't ready. And the Navy recruiter wasn't so nice to me, and the Air Force recruiter was nice to me, and he put me in the Air Force and not the Navy. And they said you shouldn't be a plumber, you should go into medicine. And I ended up being a medic, and off I went. So 30 years, 6 months, and 24 days later, after a full military career of working in medicine as a medic, but also in leadership, especially the last third of my career was heavy in leadership, broad leadership, leading everybody to include combat tours. And along the way, I've been married for 30 years, raised two boys, got a 30-year-old and a 28-year-old son, and they're both doing terrific. And so I will tell you, John, I never imagined writing a book. And in fact, I had a high school English teacher that wrote on a paper one time that I should go in the military because I'd never make it in college. And I'm sure that accompanied some sort of bad, awful red grade on my paper. But I did grow up as a storyteller, and as I traveled and learned and led and got to know people and got immersed in cultures all around the world and got to live in other countries, along with that comes stories, right? And so I got to be able to convey life's tools, giving back, life and leadership from the farm to the combat zone, which is the title of the first book. I kind of got to convey some life lessons to people through stories that I hoped help them may have a little easier path as they navigated things. And so as a storyteller, and after having been around the world telling stories and going through this thing called military transition back into the civilian world, whatever you want to call it, the real world, the civilian world, or whatever reality we place on that. I would like to say that at a point in time in my life, after having been extremely accomplished in my military time, that would be easy, and it's not. It's very human, it's very raw, and it's something that you have to go through. And quite frankly, I didn't assimilate that well, and I'm finding out that and this leads into my work now. I'm finding out that most veterans go through some level of difficulty with reassimilating into the civilian role. So as I'm going through that journey, which included alcohol and getting into some things that I would rather not have, but I was there, having a near-death experience. You and I talked a little bit about some of our own stuff. Having a near-death experience with a blood clot, and realizing that all this energy that was driven through this time in my life was negative, and I needed to make that positive. And telling stories about it, somebody stopped me and said, I think you probably need to write all this down. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, what are you talking about? And they said, you need to write a book. And I said, well, give me 5 reasons to write a book, because most of us don't write books to make money. You write books for either, some foundation for another business or those type of things, or you are really writing a book for people to use. I mean, as a tool. And they said, your stories are tools and you need to write it down. So this was January of 2022. And I thought, well, that sounds like a challenge. Now, that's one thing I am good at, is taking a challenge and making it real. And I thought, well, that sounds like a challenge. And so authors, and you've been around a lot of them, authors will tell you sometimes it's just, if you get the first 3 words on a piece of paper, off you go. But we talk ourselves out of ever writing those first 3 words for 1,000 reasons. All of them I think are bad. If you have a passion to write a book, you need to get started. But I did. I put the first 3 words on a book, and by June, it was something I could hold in my hand that you could buy on Amazon.
Okay.
And then you go, now what? So yeah, so that's kind of the journey how I got to the book. I mean, there's other avenues and roads that we went down. And then obviously something needed to be added to the first book, and that leads to a second edition. And then the third book is a little bit of a continuum, but something that I thought the world probably needed to talk about.
Right.
And that's about the cows. So yeah.
Okay. So what does the second edition have that the first edition doesn't?
Well, I wrote the second edition in conjunction with a friend who was very helpful in my transition, especially with my mental health pieces, PTSD and moral injury, to help with my transition. Because when we met during COVID, because we were working on COVID issues for a university here in town. And her story, her husband's story, and my story are almost congruent, except for the fact that he died and I didn't. And so when we got to talking about, what survivor guilt is like, and the types of things from being on her side of that, and kind of where I was at in life, we came down to this realization that when you have these struggles, you have to have somebody on your team. You have to have a life team, and you have to have the right people on your team to help you get through it. Far too often we try to navigate this stuff by ourselves. And then there is moral injury, and there's PTSD and trauma, all stuff that she's experienced and I've experienced. So we added some writings from hers, and I expanded on a couple of chapters, and it's a good bridge to the work I do. It's a good bridge to the work she does. And it's also a good bridge to the next book.
Did I see right that you won some awards for this book?
Yeah, they're international bestsellers. As I like to tell authors, it's not like they're flying off the shelves, but when your book gets enough exposure that people invest in it at some level, and it can push you into those, that top 1 percentile of authors for that certain time frame. It's like a record, right? It goes up to number 1, and then it settles wherever it settles, and that type of thing. So yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's been pretty cool.
Excellent. Yeah. So these first edition and second edition is filled with stories. I imagine they're true stories.
They are. Like I said, the farm is so everything that you need to know in life. The basics are on a farm. Adversity, hard work, being out of control when Mother Nature's involved. Something always has to be done. Somebody asked me one time, they said, explain that in depth. And I whittled it down to this. No matter what your age, when you're on a farm, when you're old enough to actually comprehend and contribute, it's never about you. It's always about something else, usually the animals, but it's always about something else: the crops, the animals, the time, the fences, the barns, the tractors. You're always tending to something else, and then yourself. The animals eat first. And I think that that's magical when you get out into this bigger world, because you know as well as I do, not everybody's geared that way, and especially in larger groups societally, those aren't the priorities. And so that's pretty neat to kind of have that foundation. So off of that comes farm stories, everything from being run over by a tractor when I was 4 years old to certain levels of work ethic to adversity and the things that I described. And I apply those, how I took those lessons in life, applied them usually in some leadership capacity in the military, and more specifically combat time. the goods and bads that came out of that. And then at the end of each chapter, I kind of leave some one-liners to make you introspective. So yeah, the book is not written as a checklist. No 5 whys, 12 hows, or 7 habits.
Mm-hmm.
The book is written to give people a story that they can translate into something that's similar into their life,
Mm-hmm.
and to give them some one-liners to think about to help them work through certain adversity, because life is full of that. So
Would these books be helpful to people who are suffering from PTSD, who were not in the military or first responders, but went through traumatic experiences of a different nature?
sure, absolutely. Well, my other side, even my military side, is first responder, emergency medicine. I put myself through nursing school, so I'm a shock trauma nurse. And then, that all correlates to doing the same thing in a combat environment. And then moral injury, which is a lesser known, form of trauma. So, yeah, it really does generalize to the point where you can take that and apply all of this stuff directly to your healing process, your normalization process after the trauma.
Mm-hmm. How much psych training have you got in order to write these?
Right. So, like I said, I started off as a medic in the Air Force. I did advanced medicine, which put me out in an environment as a mid-level provider. So that requires, clinical rotations with, psychiatric professionals to prepare you to do that. And then the yards of experience that come along with that at the same time. So I've been in medicine since 1985 until now, with my hands on that stuff in some pretty austere environments and leading at the same time. So no, I do not have a degree in psychology. My degree is in nursing, but with a lot of training towards psychology, especially in the environments that I had to be in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you ever work on a farm?
Oh yeah, lots of them. Everything from nuts to crops to cows.
Okay.
And I live in Montana now, so I'm never too far away from that stuff.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's where we grew up. I mean, that's where, the whole family milked cows. They were just cow milking people, and the books lean a lot on that. You got to milk cows twice a day, 365 days a year, 366 on leap year.
Mm-hmm.
As my grandmother used to say, the only time that she ever remembered in her entire life that the cows did not get milked was the second milking on the day on VJ Day, when World War II officially came to an end.
Okay.
And she said everybody was in the streets partying to the point where the cows didn't get milk. She one half milking. So one half of one day the cows didn't get milk.
Right.
And yeah, so it's an amazing environment to be around.
Yeah. So when you enlisted in the Army, I guess that kept you busy and you weren't working on a farm at that point.
No, my enlisted time, Air Force, my enlisted time in the Air Force, I started in San Antonio on basic training. I went to school in Wichita Falls, which is north of San Antonio. And then my first assignment was in Spain. I was in Torrejon during the Cold War. So not a lot of farm time. I will tell you that I had a really good buddy that was from West Virginia. He was a farmer, was a horse guy, loved horses. And I will tell you that he managed to find us horses to do a little bar hopping on horseback for my 21st birthday on the outskirts of Madrid, Spain, which was like really cool for us farm kids to kind of find some livestock and go recreate. But yeah, as far as working on a farm when I was in the Air Force, no. I mean, well, there was times when I'd go back home and help, but yeah, not on a day-to-day basis.
How's the farm doing now?
Well, the farm was my grandfather died young, and so the farm was run by family friends, and it went from I got a picture of it back here somewhere over my shoulder. It went from the traditional dairy farm, with the barns and the corrals and those kind of things to hold the animals. It's now rows and rows and rows of almond trees. And where I grew up, the majority, we call them almonds. Most people call them almonds. Where I grew up, most of those almonds that cover the world are grown in that part of California. and olives and other things. So yeah, and that's agricultural transition. It's wonderful, wonderful land that sits in the bottom of that valley that has been flooded and shaped by the Sacramento River, which is a fairly decent waterway for years and years. So almonds, walnuts,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's the farm, the actual land is not in the family anymore. It's in the community. We know who owns it, but yeah, it's not in the family anymore.
Okay. When you first contacted me, you sent me images of your book covers. One of them really stuck out because when I was little, my father told me what it means when cows lie down. And I wonder if it's true. He said, when the cows are lying down, it means it's going to rain soon. Is there any truth to that at all?
So if you go on Google, John, and you Google that, you'll get two differing opinions, right? The scientists will say there's nothing scientific that correlates. Those of us that were around cows, and if you read kind of the lead in of the book, you'll get the story. And the story is actually in Canada. It's in Saskatchewan. We were out on a lake fishing, and the guy that was kind of leading the fishing tour said, "Hey, there's thunderstorms coming in." And he goes, "We got quite a ways to get back to get the boat out of the water. We should probably start back." And he was right. And when we turned to take that boat out of the water at the boat ramp, there was about 40 cows all huddled around a tree that was, as big as my biggest two fingers together around, all laying down. And the young guy that was driving the boat, I said, "You better hurry up and get the boat out of the water." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Look at the cows." He goes, "I don't know what you mean." By the time we got the boat out of the water and pulled it to the top of the hill to take it over to the house, it was raining and lightning so hard. So that's a phenomenon I've experienced quite a bit in my life. And it's made an impression on me. And, I live in Montana now, so there's 4 cows for every human that live in Montana. So they're around all the time. So I still to this day keep an eye on them. So I believe in it. Scientists will tell you they can't find enough data to make it work. I don't know how hard they've studied it, but I absolutely believe in it. And I think your dad did too, because he wouldn't tell you that if he hadn't experienced it.
Yeah, and he would know. He grew up on a farm back in Hungary. We're from Hungary, so
Oh, nice.
yeah,
I've been to Hungary. I lived in Hungary for 3 months of my life.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
you want to talk about that book, When the Cows Lie Down?
sure. So the subtitle to that is Why People Quit You, Their Leader. And the crux of the book, or the what drove the book to be titled that is that I think if you look, and I'm going to speak in general terms here, so I'm sure that somebody will totally disagree with me, which is perfectly fine because it's a big world with a lot going on. But this world's moving fast. Technology makes us move fast. Our lifestyles make us move fast. Our hobbies and desires make us move fast. And I think I hypothesize in the book that there is a lot of cows lying down in our environment, the figurative cows. And we blow right past them. We're either going so fast we don't see them, or we've normalized to the fact that they're just lying there, and we don't catch the subtle warning signs that they're emitting so that we can do something about it to mitigate things. And not only till we have something poor occur, a poor outcome occur, do we go back and go, wow, if somebody would have seen those cows lying down right there, the figurative ones, we wouldn't be where we were at. And leadership is very near and dear to me. I think that we may have neglected 2 full generations of young people, deliberately developing them as leaders. And I hear today, I even had a meeting with the business owner this morning, and I hear today too far often, I can't handle this turnover. The people are leaving, and I got to get new people, and then they go. And people leave culture, and people leave organization, and people leave environment, and people leave their bosses. They don't normally leave a job if they enjoy it. And a lot of times that goes with people missing the subtleties of cows lying down when it comes to the human resource, the human being. And so the book is really geared towards some experiences that I've had, to include some of my own screw ups, leading the human resource, and how I could have avoided that. And those are the figurative cows that relate to that. So it's a tool. The book is a tool, like I said, just like the other book. It's written in very Ken Blanchard-esque style, very short chapters, things that even if you go to bed and you're a little tired, you can still get through one chapter. And the people that enjoy the books that I get feedback from will often say that they leave it next to their bed or next to their chair, or they take it to work and it sits on the desk, because if something pops up in their life, they just kind of go back to the chapter that relates to that, and then kind of get through the one-liners to see if there's something there that can be helpful, at least how you're talking to yourself and working through it.
Sure, sure. I get the
Yeah.
impression that the book, in fact, all three of your books are something you can just pick up, read a little bit, think about it, apply it to your life, and then move on. You're not telling a story throughout the whole book. They're all a bunch of different stories.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's really neat. Really neat.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been gosh, John, if I say this, anybody listen to this you'll hit the end button. It's been so enjoyable. It's been easy. Now think about this kid that was damaged by an English teacher that told him he probably shouldn't be writing anything, to getting to the point where the enjoyment of doing this project and working with people to get these books published. It felt easy in the end. The writing and expressing and framing and trying to put my experiences into a written form, and at the same time trying to draw off enough empathy, just feeling of other people, so that I can shape my stories in a way that it's consumable and usable.
Okay.
And I think we got there. I think we got there. It's you never write. Not everybody loves The Hobbit. It's a very popular book, but not everybody loves it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our passion now, is to relate to others, and writing's a pretty powerful thing.
It is. Are you hybrid publishing or self-publishing?
So I really screwed up bad with the first publisher. Had some help. I won't use the name, but had some help with an established publisher. The front end was enjoyable and a learning experience, and going through the process and putting things together and working with a publishing company to do those things. The back end, the upselling, give me everything seems to be two prices: $1,000 or $2,500. If you just give them that, they'll do this advertising, they'll do these things, and they can get you going on a track where you think your book's going to end up being a movie. And that was very uncomfortable to me. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a teammate a publishing teammate that actually cared about my book. And so I started working with a publishing company called Finish the Book. Susie Schaefer is the owner and my publisher. And so she works through the self-publishing process, but she works with editors and illustrators and those type of people to build things, and designers for your covers. So it's this collaborative thing that's very low pressure, and they're not upselling or trying to do extra things or to market or to get your book to drive money for them. They're really helping you finish the book, complete your passion.
Good. Well, that may come in handy for some of the viewers here who are in the process of writing a book. So
yeah, no, you're welcome. If you look at the self-published process, it can scare you to death, especially when you start to delve into it. I think we've all kind of pecked around it. If you look at the full publisher process, it can scare you to death just because of the depth of your checkbook. This was the perfect fit for me. Reasonable price, and it's intimate. I mean, it's here's how I'm feeling, and especially Susie just doesn't say, well, do these things. She says, yep, that's normal. I've worked with enough writers. I've worked with enough authors. These are sticking points. She helped me take the emotion out of it. Because when you start to write a book, John, as you know, it's like your child. Mm-hmm. And now you're emotionally involved in this thing. And somebody goes, well, let's change the name of this chapter. And you're like, No, leave my kid alone. And
Yeah,
actually what they're doing is making your kid better. They're
yeah.
not damaging anything. Yeah.
Good, good.
Uh,
So, how are sales overall for you for these three books?
First book, I'm finding out second books sell slower. First book gets a lot of emotion, people you know, and your network, and I have pretty big network, and so that that took off and went pretty well. The second book, it did enough to hit number one in the categories and be international bestseller. But um, guess how do I put that? Because I don't want to say it's bad. Because as soon as I say that, what'll happen is I'll get off of here and somebody's going to send me a note and say I bought a dozen of your books. And then if you look at the statistics, it looks like your book's doing really well. And then it may go a week and not sell a copy. And that's just the tyranny of books. I mean, you're competing against 3 million other books out there. And probably, a good chunk of those are in the similar genre. So I wish it was selling a little bit more. This second book, though, I have used it around my speaking and my engagements and those type of things. So some of those have been included as far as part of my speaking stuff. So I've given out quite a few. And that's probably more important to me than selling them because of the way they're written and what they're for.
Okay.
But people love the title. They pick it up once they get it. Somebody was telling me the other day, they said, I've read a lot of leadership books, never one with a cow on the cover.
Right. Do you have a website?
I do. My company's maxfabconsulting.com. And that all goes back to this flag behind me and some organizational attitude stuff. And so I put that chapter that identifies the company, that chapter is in both books. So I took it out of the first book and I put it in the cow book because I thought people needed to have that reference if they read the books out of sequence or just picked one up.
Okay.
So it's maxfabconsulting.com. It's MAXFAB consulting.com. On there, you can get my blogs. You can get, I have my own podcast called the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast because kangaroos can only go forward physically. And so they have to have great leadership traits on how to navigate what's in front of them. And so I try to have those type of leaders on the podcast. And and I blog and my newsletter. And so you can sign up, send me a note. I'll put you on the newsletter and you can get words of wisdom from me for once a month, and we blog on all kinds of topics, to include moral injury, PTSD, but also just leadership. Yeah,
I will do that for sure.
yeah, you bet.
Now, where besides Amazon are your books available?
They're on Barnes and Noble, and if you Google them, you would be surprised that you'll find them out even in Hungary.
Hmm.
Amazing enough, which
Wow.
is it's pretty interesting to find that. But Barnes and Noble, Amazon are the two big places.
Okay.
The pretty standard places. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Any,
you can go on the website and click get the book and send me your stuff, and I'll send you a signed copy.
Okay, great. Any ideas that you have brewing in your head about another book to come in the future?
Oh, see now you're going to get into this space. This is good. This is a great question. I said when I finished the second book that I wasn't going to write a third for a while. I would rather write in blog form. There's some people that blog daily that I kind of admire, and I think they have a big impact. And people consume smaller things. They don't even, my books are not gigantic, but they can even overwhelm people when they pick them up and they feel like they got to finish them. They want to finish something. But I'll tell you, John, there's a couple of things that happened, and I went into one of my loquacious tirades about some story in my life and how it applies to something that was going on. And somebody looked at me and goes, well, that's a whole chapter. So based on the last 30 days and the fact that probably 3 chapters have come out of my mouth on different things, and I've stuffed them away on the side, the odds are probably there will be a third book. It'll probably be very targeted. It probably won't have a cow on the cover, but it probably will have a tree. I just don't know which one yet.
All right. Well, David, when that happens and you get your next book published, or even if you're in the process of working on it, I'll have you back on the show so we can talk some more about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love it. I
All
love
right.
it.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation. You're an interesting person, and I'm interested in that book, When the Cows Lie Down. In fact, I will subscribe to your blog and I'll hear what you have to say and see how you write.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd love, and feedback's great, John. The
Well,
more the more the merrier. If you want a copy of the cows, when we jump off here, we'll get your address and I'll mail you one.
okay, super. All right. Well, you take care of yourself, David.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you for watching. And before you go, if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. You can even leave a comment. All of that really helps in recommending this channel to a larger audience. And if you are an author, I would love to speak with you about your book. Until next time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.